So good day, friends. This is Dr. Bob Hamilton, and you have tuned in today to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. Thank you for making us part of your day. It means a lot to me. I know you're busy people. Today we have a great guest, so you'll be happy you're here. But if you like what you hear, pass it on to friends, relatives, neighbors, whoever. We're trying to build an audience because I bring to you on a weekly basis phenomenal people, and today is no exception. So it's a pleasure to welcome today to the Hamilton Review, Michael Schneider. He is, before he began doing what he's doing now, he was an entrepreneur, several startups he began. And about 4 years ago, he segued into becoming, to founding, and now is full-time, an organization called Streets for All. We're going to talk about that organization. But first of all, Michael, welcome to the Hamilton Review.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And by the way, I want to say that Michael is here. He's in the studio, which makes for a much more dynamic and much more fun, interesting conversation. So thanks for making the effort to get here today. I appreciate it.
It's nice to get off the Zoom train every now and then.
Yeah, indeed. And actually, the people that they're actually real people that you can touch and behold. So I like that. So listen, Michael, I like to have my guest kind of introduce himself to the people who are watching and listening. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to you and just tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, where you grew up. What are those inflection points of your life that really cause you to be doing what you're doing? Because I think what you're doing is very fascinating to me. And so the microphone belongs to you.
Well, thank you for having me. So I'm born and raised in West Los Angeles. And what that essentially means is I was told from a very early age by not only my parents, but society, that I had to drive everywhere and I had to get my driver's license on my 16th birthday. And that was the single most important thing in my life that I could achieve. And then it would just be freedom. Cars were freedom. And boy, did I follow that path. I was at the DMV at 8 a.m. on my 16th birthday in Santa Monica. I think by about 8:45, I had my license. I was so proud. And I was off to the races like many people that grow up in Los Angeles.
Sure.
I was free.
Yep.
And I lived that way for many years, and I started several companies. My first one was in high school, and as I made more money, I spent that money mostly on cars, leasing a more expensive car, souping up a car, et cetera, et cetera. The important things in life. And so I lived that way for many years, and what happened was the financial crisis happened.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden in the late 2000s, 08, 09, 2010, I was in trouble. And I had to give up my big expensive BMW lease and figure out how to get around. And my grandfather at the time had this absolutely beautiful 1984 Mercedes convertible that was just this stunning looking car that worked about 20% of the time. And the rest, it was in the shop. And so it got to the point where I was blowing out entire mornings, sometimes entire days, because of car trouble.
Yeah.
And I got really sick of it. And my then girlfriend, now wife, had bought me a used Schwinn off of Craigslist. And it probably cost $100. The thing was made in the 70s. It still worked. And she had this romantic idea.
Probably weighed about 200 pounds.
It was a very heavy bike, and I think only 5 gears.
Yeah.
But she had this romantic idea. She lived in Venice at the time, and she thought we would ride on the boardwalk around sunset, these kind of romantic biking ideas. And instead, what happened was I challenged myself to get around town on a I remember the day my car was in the shop. I think I had some dry cleaning hanging in the window that had flown off when the top malfunctioned. I don't know. It was just a mess. And I said to myself, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And so I challenged myself to get around town for 1 week without dying. That's what I had in my head. So I started with the basics. I'm going to go to my gym in the morning using my bicycle. At the time, my gym happened to be up a big hill in West Hollywood, and I didn't know if I could make it up that hill, and it was tough the first few days. But by day 3 or 4, I couldn't believe how great I felt physically and mentally.
Sure.
And I couldn't believe that I had solved the 2 biggest complaints people have living in Los Angeles. I was never in traffic, and I never had to look for parking. And I felt like I'd hacked my city.
So you really are exposing a couple of secrets here, and that is that getting around, and as you know one reason why Michael is on this podcast is because I ride my bike as well. And I've been riding my bike for quite a while now.
We both have the wet jeans
We
from the
both
rain this
have,
morning.
yeah. Today it was pouring down rain, and I got poured on in a big way. And my even though you can't see them very well, my jeans are soaked. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But you're exactly right. Traffic is meaningless. Let me give you. You're an LA kid, and many of the people listening to are LA people. Okay, imagine this: you're working in Santa Monica, and your friend tells you, "Hey, listen, I have scheduled a very important meeting at 5 o'clock in Westwood," and you're in Santa Monica. Now, for people who don't live in LA, that is you have to go across or underneath the 405 freeway. The traffic is horrific. At 5 o'clock, come on, that's commuter time. And he said, "Can you make it?" And I said, "Sure, I can make it. I'm riding my bike." And I jumped on my bike and I literally rode through the parking lot, which was Wilshire Boulevard, which is a parking lot for about 2 miles. And I got there exactly on time. The only thing I had to wait for was the light at Sepulveda, so I didn't get completely trashed by all the traffic, right? You can't get run over by cars. That's not a good thing. And I made it, no problem. And you're exactly right. There is no parking issue either. I just drove up to the location, locked my bike in front of it, and was in the door within 20 seconds. I love that. And that to me is a real secret. So if anybody, and I'm not sure, I think that we're LA people. I think that probably applies to other places in this world too.
The most popular tweet I've ever sent is really simple. It's a video I took on Santa Monica Boulevard going east. It wasn't even rush hour. It was like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, going through Beverly Hills on the green painted bike lane. And the tweet says, "Don't tell anyone, but it's possible to never be in traffic in Los Angeles." And the video is simply me riding my bike past 30, 40, 50 cars stuck in traffic. And, I have different feelings about it. On one hand, I want someone who's stuck in traffic, this soul-crushing traffic that we all live with, to look up and be like, maybe I could do that. That guy's just flying past me. On the other hand, I understand why people in Los Angeles are generally apprehensive or don't consider the bicycle to be a real transportation mode because they're scared to death.
Sure.
And that's where Streets for All comes in.
And that's where you got involved. So you started riding your bike. You started running up that hill in West Hollywood. You found out you could do it, which is probably felt a little bit of pride there. And you clearly got addicted.
I got completely addicted. I probably got chemically addicted with those endorphins that were popping off in my head from riding my bike. But I also got addicted. I don't think I appreciated at the time the amount of stress and angst that came with moving around Los Angeles. Like you just said, someone said, "Meet me here at this time." If you're from Los Angeles or been here long enough, you don't invite someone to West Hollywood for dinner on Friday at 7 p.m. if they live in Santa Monica, because you don't want them to go through 2 hours of traffic to get there.
That's correct.
So literally, we've let the way we've designed our streets and our transportation system to some degree control our lives and our happiness.
Yeah.
Did you know domestic violence goes up in Los Angeles on extra heavy traffic days, an extra 9%? It's really, really impacts our mental health and physical well-being way more than anyone thinks about.
So I did not know that. So 9% increase in domestic violence. I can tell you one thing, that we don't, in Los Angeles, we don't talk about how far a particular location is. We never mention, oh, it's a mile away or 2 miles away. We never say that. We always say it's 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever. And we also, in our mind, we immediately calculate, what time are you going to come? We always ask that question. And to actually have an event, like you say, like my friend who scheduled at 5 o'clock, this guy, of course, I asked him, I go, that's a crazy time to have any event for anybody else who doesn't ride their bike. But for me, it's fine. But, we schedule our dinners, we schedule events completely different here because we're always mindful of traffic. And it is something that is obnoxious. And that's something that I have to say, I feel like a free man in terms of just my ability to get around. And I'm sure you have that same sense of freedom.
Well, I think we're lied to as kids. The auto industry, movies, all tell us cars are freedom. And I understand why they say that because, when I turned 16, I got my driver's license. I was bugging my parents to borrow their car. and off I went with a girlfriend or a friend or whatever, and I had the freedom to go where I wanted, when I wanted, and that was a big deal.
Yeah.
But as adults, it's not that romantic to be sitting in traffic all the time.
No.
And cars aren't freedom. Cars are financial sinkholes. They are incredibly expensive. You got to find a place to park them no matter where you are.
True.
They're really a burden. And the true freedom is to have consistency in how long it takes you to get from point A to point B and not have to worry about parking. And by the way, it happens to be really physically and mentally good for you to move.
Amen to that. I think that that is one of the things that helped me in terms of just fitness in general. I think that there's no question that, I'm not the most fit person in the world, but it has allowed me, even my short rides to work in the morning, which is 1.7 miles, both ways, one way and then 1.7 on the way back. It has given me a little bit of toning for sure, and it does keep me a little bit, I think, healthier body-wise. I want to say that, do you have a car now, by the way? Do you own a car?
My wife and I own one car. The biggest argument we have in our marriage is if we're going to drive somewhere or bike somewhere. I don't want to use the car unless she makes me, frankly.
So we have one car too. And it took me a long time to convince my wife to get rid of, you had a Mercedes convertible. I had a big fat Mercedes that sat in my carport day after day after day. And invariably the battery died. Invariably the tires kind of rotted, I guess. And I finally said, hey, baby, listen, we're paying insurance on this thing where every time I bring this thing in the shop is $1,000. And I kind of thought, why do I have this car that I never use? And it took me a while to kind of convince my wife that we only needed one car. And I did it. And I can't tell you, I first of all, there's no more car repair bills. There's no more insurance. There's no more gasoline. There is just kind of like, when I want to go somewhere, I either walk or I get on my bike or I can Uber. Sometimes I Uber. We're lucky to have Uber in LA, which is very available. So we're lucky people. So tell us, before we get, I want to introduce this whole idea of Streets for All, which, by the way, there is if you can see that. I don't know if you can see it or not. We'll have this up on our website later on. But you began this organization, Streets for All, about 4 years ago. Tell us a little bit about the genesis of this group.
Well, so about 10 years ago was when I gave up my car completely and just went all in on my bicycle. And I couldn't even tell you who my council member was or how many there were in Los Angeles. I didn't know how decisions were made here. I was just someone on my bike trying to survive wherever I was going from point A to point B. And that included, by the way, about 6 years ago, I started riding to and from the airport. And I was coming back from the airport one day. I was on Ballona Creek, beautiful bike path. And I was thinking, why doesn't this path keep going past the creek keeps going? Why doesn't the path keep going? And it occurred to me I had no idea how these decisions were made. So I started asking questions. And around the same time, my wife and I had our first child. And so when you have a kid on the bike with you and a car passes you with 3 inches instead of 3 feet, or they honk or they follow you too closely, all the things drivers sometimes do with people on bicycles. For me, it was a whole different level of frustration.
Sure.
I was
and probably
annoyed.
Probably a little bit of fear too, because now you got a baby in tow.
The fear turned to rage. So it was anger when it was just me in my own life, and it was rage when they were also endangering, and they could clearly see there was a child on the bike. So that was the tipping point for me. And in 2019, I ran for and was elected to my neighborhood council. There's 99 neighborhood councils in the city of Los Angeles.
Okay.
They opine often on transportation issues, and they didn't at the time always do what I would define as a progressive stance on transportation. So I wanted to change that in my neck of the woods. I got myself appointed to the Bicycle Advisory Committee, but the hole in the market I found was no one could tell you who to vote for if you cared about these issues. There were a bunch of good organizations, but they were 501c3s. They were nonprofit organizations that legally could not endorse candidates.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell you to vote for. So that's what Streets for All became. We were the first and still only transportation-focused political action committee. We're highly political. We endorse. We spend money on the right people. We spend money against the wrong people. We hold candid debates. we hold people's feet to the fire when they say they'll do one thing and they do another, which sometimes happens in politics. And we really give people a place to know how to vote and know where to put their chips if they care about these topics.
Yeah.
And that didn't exist before we came around.
Amazing. So you're not a 501c3, you are a political action committee.
We're a political action committee, and recently we have a 501c4 that we just formed. And we also just started a relationship with a 501c3, so we're able to accept tax-deductible dollars. But obviously that work is completely separate from our political work.
Yeah. And what do you do with the 501c3 money? I mean, what kind do you make? Is that like more of awareness, public awareness, and
education, specific projects? Venice Boulevard, we have a great site, VeniceBoulevardForAll.com, which has fought since 2019 for protected bike lanes and dedicated bus lanes on Venice Boulevard.
Sure.
They're actually being installed right now for about 3 miles of Venice Boulevard.
Wow. Okay.
Took years, but it's happening.
Yeah.
We have a campaign called destructionfornada.com, which is a campaign to end all freeway widening in LA County and reallocate that money towards multimodal investments, bike lanes, bus lanes, things like that. We're about to launch a campaign in Westwood, trying to get a holistic set of multimodal improvements in and around Westwood Village. So things like that.
Wonderful things. Okay, I want to take a break right now and come back in about 1 minute, and I want to get back. I want to get deeper into what you're really doing in terms of an organization. So, friends, you're listening today to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. We're having a interesting conversation with Michael Schneider. He is the head and the founder of Streets for All, an organization that is doing some good work. So we'll be right back.
The Hamilton Review podcast is brought to you by Hamilton Babies, 9 kid-friendly products designed for the little loves in your life. Find them at hamiltonbabies.com or amazon.com. Also consider Dr. Hamilton's recently published book, 7 Secrets of the Newborn, available at Barnes & Noble, your local independent bookstore, and amazon.com.
So friends, welcome back to the Hamilton Review. We're continuing our conversation today with Michael Schneider. He is the founder of Streets for All, an organization which has big hopes on changing the dynamics of travel, certainly around Los Angeles, but really a bigger picture as well. So, Michael, one of the things, the subtitle of my show, of course, is Where Kids and Culture Collide. And I'm curious, you have a couple kids.
3.
3 kids,
Yes.
Okay. And you're telling us that you ride your bicycle down to LAX to get on airplanes. Do you do that with your children?
So for the first time in December, we went to Mexico as a family, and I got my wife to agree to bike to the airport with the kids. She'd biked with me before without the kids.
Okay.
I have an electric cargo bike, and it's a back feet. It's a Dutch-style bike, so the cargo actually goes in front of you.
Okay.
So there's a big box with 3 seats and 3 seat belts. It's got a cover if it's too sunny or raining or whatever. And that's where the kids went. And so the kids went in there. We I had a trailer behind me with some of our luggage. And then my wife was on her e-bike and had a trailer carrying one more piece of luggage. And that's how we got to the airport.
So do you have a video of that? Because I want to see the video of that.
I do. I have if you go to michaelschneider.com, I have a lot of Medium articles, and I wrote one specific to biking with your family to the airport.
Okay, because I would like to see that. That sounds wild. And your wife agreed to this?
She agreed to it. And you know what? She complained a little bit about certain things, but I think if at the end of the day, she might have even enjoyed it.
So this is your little cargo bike. That's an e-bike, right?
Yes.
Is that correct?
It's an e-bike.
I want to ask about e-bikes in a minute, but did your wife have an e-bike too?
She did.
Okay, because that's only fair. I will tell you that one time we were in New York City and we were in Manhattan, and we were going to go on a bike ride. I rented a regular bike. My wife had an e-bike. She blew me out of the water. I mean, honestly, I could not keep up with her. It was like one big, huge, trying to catch up with my wife. And she loved the bike ride. I was thrashed when we finished, I will tell you. So, I want to talk about e-bikes, but one of the big things when people ask me, hey, Bob, you ride your bike? And the first thing they always ask me is, aren't you afraid? And the answer is, I'm not afraid in the sense of being fearful, but I am certainly on guard. What are your thoughts about the danger of riding bikes, and how can we make bike riding more safe?
Well, first of all, we have to compare it to the danger of being in a car. And I think somehow people think well, if you want to be safe, you drive. Biking is dangerous. Well, biking's only dangerous to the extent that a driver doesn't yield or something happens, they're distracted and they crash into you. But cycling on its own is actually a lot safer because if you fall or you get interrupted, you're going maybe 12, 15 miles an hour.
Right.
You're not going 60 miles an hour.
That's true.
I think, unfortunately, guns just surpassed it, and that breaks my heart. But it's either number one or the number two cause of death for children are car accidents in this state.
Okay.
So let's not pretend like the alternative to biking is just a free-for-all and totally safe. It's not. Having said that, yeah, it's completely tragic. We live in a city where we have year-round sunshine, today accepted, but usually it's relatively flat. 50% of the cars you see on the road every day go 3 miles or less. So I'll say that another way. 50% of all the cars you see every day are doing what could be a 15-minute bike ride.
Well,
50%, 50.
Hold on. This is a very, very important point. 50% of the cars that are on the road are going like 1.5 miles in one direction and then 1.5 miles back. That to me is unbelievable.
So 6 miles round trip.
Okay,
3
gotcha.
miles or less.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
all right.
still.
Same idea. I mean, 3 miles on a bicycle is not that far.
A third of the trips are 1 mile or less. You're getting into walking territory there.
Sure.
So if we just made it safe, they would come. Events like Ciclavia prove it, where the roads close and you have thousands of people on their bikes going throughout the city with joy, children. But those bikes just collect dust in the garage most of the time because they're terrified. And Streets for All is trying to create not just project by project infrastructure changes with protected bike lanes, but systemic change. Getting the right people elected to office who will just do this stuff on their own because they believe in it. That's what we're trying to do.
So when you talk about systemic change, what if you had the perfect scenario, what would that look like?
Well, let's look at examples where systemic change has happened. Paris. If you went to Paris 10 years ago, there were videos from tourists. It was funny almost playing Frogger trying to cross a street because no one would stop for you and it was very dangerous. Now, under Anne Hidalgo, she literally ran for re-election. And I have this is one of my favorite campaign videos of all time. And it said, essentially, if you re-elect me, I'm going to remove 60,000 parking spaces from central Paris. I'm going to make it safe to ride a bike on every street, and you will no longer be able to drive your car across all of Paris. You'll be able to get to your home, but you can't keep going. There's going to be a series of diverters that are going to make driving inconvenient, driving across Paris.
Okay.
She won in a landslide.
Wow.
So what's happening in Paris now? If you go on Twitter and look at photos and videos, it looks like Amsterdam.
Yeah.
It's a complete change. And that's only happened in 5 years, 6 years.
So I will tell you that my wife and I were on vacation in Paris, and we rented bicycles, and we had the most wonderful time. I can tell you that. So a little bit of a testimonial here. We were
When was this?
Like 2 or 3 years ago, right before the pandemic, whatever that was, like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was a phenomenal, wonderful time. We were riding along the Seine River. They have a beautiful bike path along that.
That used to be a highway.
Serious.
Yeah, that used to be a highway.
Okay, so I'm learning something here. And it's incredible. It's beautiful. And we were all over Paris. And basically, we rode our bikes. We weren't, trying to, yes, we did get, taxis. We went out to dinner and things like that. But a lot of our, traveling and a lot of our tourism was just simply on bicycles. And it was really wonderful. Amazing. So that's what you're talking about. You're talking about, so this is not going to sit well with some people when you're talking about removing parking places and making it more difficult to travel via car through the city. 'Cause some people are going to hear these words and say, no way. How do you overcome that resistance?
Well, first of all, I want to make clear, Streets for All is not anti-car. There is a car in our logo.
I see it.
We're simply anti-cars having all of the space.
Yeah.
We want a balanced transportation system. There should be space for cars. There should be a dedicated lane for buses because they're far more efficient than cars to move people. And there should be protected bike lanes that are actually keep people safe. The usual standard is ages 8 to 80 feel low stress in whatever the facility is. If you have a street like that, you know what you're going to have? Less traffic, less demand for parking, because many of the people that would have driven will choose to either take the bus because now it's flying past private cars at rush hour with its own lane, or choose to bike because you don't have to look for parking. It's fun. It's convenient.
Yeah.
But we don't design streets like that. Most streets in Los Angeles are designed like racetracks. And that needs to change.
Yeah, no kidding. They move. I know that because I'm on my bike and I see people zipping by me like really fast. This is a little bit related, but not completely. But we recently finished, or we're finishing. We're still building an expo in LA, which is a trail, which is a train line, which is linking now Santa Monica to downtown and more all around. I ride that occasionally. I noticed that the ridership on these on the train is not that great. I mean, it's really hard to pry people out of their vehicles. How are you attempting to do that?
So in order for the train to work, people have to be able to get to and from the station.
Yeah.
And because most people don't think about a bike as a transportation method in the city of Los Angeles, the options are limited.
Yeah.
And some expo stations have these huge parking garages by them, but we're about to open up a train under Wilshire Boulevard. It's going to go from Brentwood to downtown LA.
Yep.
There is no room for massive parking garages at Wilshire and Rodeo or Wilshire and Fairfax. And so that's where bikes come in. And that's why they're a perfect first mile, last mile solution, because they don't take up space.
Yep.
You don't need a parking garage, and people can actually get to the train. I think that's how you have to do it. And I don't see us making those investments today. We're spending over $1 billion a mile building the Purple Line.
Yeah.
But I have yet to see the city of Los Angeles or the city of Beverly Hills, the two cities it goes through, put a single protected bike lane that will go to and from a Purple Line station. Same thing with the LA River. The LA River has a great, beautiful bike path. There is not a single way to get to the LA River on a protected bike lane. So we have this great facility that everyone feels unsafe getting to.
Yeah, no, I know the LA River, and I've ridden my bike along it, and it's crazy that we don't have these opportunities. So we have these things that are there, but they're really not there. And I like this idea of one the access if you're going the last mile, the first mile, last mile on a bike, and that is literally minutes. And if you have a safe place to park it, definitely that's great. Also, frankly, I will tell you that some of the train stations, one in particular is the Bergamo station in Santa Monica. This is for LA people. There's nowhere to drop people off. I don't know if you've ever got on that station, but you can't drop people off near the station to actually let them get on the train. If someone drives you down, for example, it's crazy. It was almost I had to get dropped off, a good 100 yards away to get to the station. So they got to work on that.
And this gets into a whole other conversation about land use and housing density. And, the most successful transit systems in the world have dense housing above the stations. That's where the people are. They don't have to drive 5 miles to get to a station. They're already there.
They're there. Yeah.
We need to change that too.
That's a different conversation. But listen, okay, so my subtitle is Where Kids and Culture Collide. How do we get kids biking? How do we get kids out there engaging?
So I think bikes still to this day are associated with freedom for kids.
Yeah.
And I think most of us had a childhood where we probably rode a bike and that probably felt just fantastic. We really enjoyed it. And then we grow up and kind of forget about that and drive our SUVs everywhere and wonder what happened. One of the things that I'm really passionate about, especially with my own kids, is biking places with them, but especially trying to solve the school pickup and drop off.
Yep.
If you go by a Los Angeles area school around drop off, you will see a huge line of cars full of stressed out parents trying to get to their place in this long line, drop their kid off so the kid can get to school on time. And the stats are something like it went from over 60% of kids in the 60s biking to school to under 10% today.
Yeah.
And we have to change that. So I was really inspired by this concept called the bike bus. Okay. It was started, or I don't know if it was the first one, but it was made prominent by a guy named Sam Balto in Portland. He's a coach at an elementary school. And he now has close to 200 students that bike to school together on the street once a week.
Wow.
It's a party. He has a huge Bluetooth speaker that has music on. The kids are chatting and having fun. It is so much more joyful than a child sitting in a backseat of an SUV waiting for their turn to get dropped off.
For
It's
sure.
also great for parents because you know what? Parents, I don't think we don't want to be Uber drivers for our kids. And that freedom and that freedom for both parents and kids is just fantastic. So I started a bike bus here in LA. I think it's the first one in Los Angeles. My daughter is 7. She's in first grade. And we meet at a park. And anywhere between 3 kids to up to 10 kids, the most we've had so far, come. And you know what? The parents are driving them there with the bike in the back of the car. But still, it's still fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think it's...
So do the parents go along with them too? I'm sure you have parents who join the bike bus, right?
I have some parents that join the bike bus. I have some parents that just say, here's my kindergartner. And the kindergartner goes in my bike in the bucket and we take them and
Okay.
they go to work.
That works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
So, to that point, Michael, I live very close to a junior high called Paul Revere. And I'm in earshot. I can actually look out my second story window and look at San Vicente Boulevard. And you're absolutely correct. There is a line that snakes around the corner. And it goes, it must be, I'm not over exaggerating, a good half mile, maybe a mile long. And, what I hear honking all the time because the people who are dropping off these kids these are junior high kids, by the way. They're not elementary school kids. So these are kids who are a little bit older, a little bit more mature, who clearly could ride their bike, if they wanted to. I hear honking and I hear a lot of angry, responding honks of people who are just angry, dropping off their kids to go to school. And then, of course, they have to repeat this whole thing in the afternoon, too. If you drop off a kid, you got to pick him up. The kids are not walking home a lot of times. And so I kind of go, first of all, how much stomach acid is being, secreted and how much anxiety is being created by this whole drop-off thing. I don't know what you can do about that to change that. But seriously, I think that this is a missed opportunity for young boys and girls. And certainly in today's world where we're not getting, these kids are not getting PE anymore. They're not getting recesses. They're being in academic classes for a full day. They don't really get that kind of movement we used to see. We took for granted when I was a kid growing up, for sure. How do you begin to do that? How do you begin to change that paradigm?
Well, it starts with 2 things. It starts with the infrastructure, most importantly. Changing the streets so kids feel safe and parents feel safe enough to let their kids bike to school. It also has to come from parents who also ride a bike once in a while and understand that their kid would be okay. And it takes a certain amount of trust and faith in your own kid. But we basically have a system today in Los Angeles where the only place kids get to use their bikes is in a park where there are no cars.
Sure.
And that's sad. There was this really fascinating article I read about this guy. I think he lives in Wales. And it was about the freedom to roam, he called it. And it was something like this. His grandfather got to roam within 9 miles of his house on his own. And he would show up at some point for dinner. And his father got to roam about 6 miles. And he got to roam about 3 miles. And his children have about a half mile that they get to roam. And why is that? There's, you could argue there's culture changes. It's a more dangerous society now. The data doesn't really show that.
Yeah.
But mostly the cars have gotten bigger. They're driving faster. And every parent's worst nightmare is their kid getting hit and killed while trying to cross the street. And until we solve that and traffic calm our streets so they're actually safe enough for a 5-year-old to be respected and to cross. There was a program on Netflix, I forget the name of it, but it was about Japanese kids as young as 2 and 3 going and running errands. And Japan is a very different culture in many ways, but it was phenomenal the way a 2-year-old would cross in a crosswalk and cars would instantly stop and not come anywhere close.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I think in Los Angeles, even if they saw the 2-year-old, if they thought they can make it and not get delayed, they would go for that gap.
Yeah.
And so the culture has to change a bit. The infrastructure has to change. And we're really, sacrificing our kids' freedom and abilities to just bike over to a friend's house. That used to be that way.
I interviewed a gal by the name of Lenore Skenazy, and you may or may not know her, but
I
she
just spoke with her. She's fantastic.
She wrote a book called Free Range Kids.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it has to do with the culture, with the fact we have become so afraid of not only, cars, roaring by us, but also people, and the fact that there's such a big fear of kidnapping and those kind of things, which are, of course, heinous. But you're kind of reminding me of Lenore and our conversation. This whole idea that we're losing, kids are losing those opportunities because they're being so sheltered from the real world, and is something we need to figure out ways to reverse. Listen, what are your projects that you're now currently working on? I'm curious to know where you're at in terms of the overall, your organization and what you're looking to do.
So we're very active in Sacramento. Last year we had 11 bills that we wrote, sponsored, or signed. Wrote, sponsored, or supported, signed into law by the governor. Everything from...
By the way, if you want to sign the bills, that's fine. I think you probably do a better job in some ways.
Can I get permission to do that?
Yeah, sure. I give it to
you. So this year we have a whole slate of bills that not everything can be solved at the state level.
Sure.
We have a very decentralized system, and most stuff for the topics that I care about are really a city issue.
Yeah.
But there's certain things the state can do. The number one thing the state needs is automated speed enforcement. This works in New York. This works in Europe. Here, the only way you get a speeding ticket is if a police officer happens to see you speeding. That's it.
Yeah.
It's a big city. There's a lot of cars, 7,000 miles of road. And, there's other issues that come with having armed police doing traffic enforcement. Automated speed enforcement is the single biggest thing we could do.
I can tell you they do it in Arizona, because I've gotten speeding tickets in Arizona, and much to my chagrin, this shows up in my mailbox. I kind of go, how in the world? But there's a picture of me in my car, speeding by 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. By the way, I wasn't like going crazy, but anyway, they got me.
5's pretty conservative, but in LA, if it's a 35 mile per hour street, you get people going 50, 55 on a routine basis.
Routinely, yeah. Okay.
So we're working on big ideas like that. We're working on decriminalizing riding a bike on the sidewalk, because there's some places in the state where it's still not legal to ride a bike on the sidewalk.
Yep.
We just introduced a bill around daylighting, which is this concept that it improves the line of sight of drivers at intersections. So in certain cities throughout the state, if you have parked cars almost right up to the crosswalk at an intersection, that decreases the ability of the driver to see to the right and sometimes to the left of them. Correct. And see pedestrians and see cyclists. So this bill would make it a legal requirement that cities could not place parking within 20 feet of a crosswalk. It would have to be red curb.
Okay.
So those are a few examples. I think we have about a dozen bills that we're going to sponsor this year.
Yeah.
And then we're very active in the city of Los Angeles. We had a ballot measure that we did last year called Healthy Streets LA. I went out every weekend for 13 weekends and collected signatures from people I don't know. And we turned in 106,000 signatures to the city and qualified it, and it'll be on the March 2024 ballot. And this ballot measure, the number one question I got when I was getting signatures is, why is a ballot measure needed to require the city to do their own plan? Because that's all it says.
Yeah.
If the city repaves a street and there's a bike lane plan for that street, they have to put in the bike lane. Right now, they're mostly repaving streets and ignoring their own plan.
Okay.
But the reason we need it is because they're ignoring their own plan, which is just a suggestion. And we want to take it from being a suggestion to being an ordinance, where the city, when they repave a street, has to put in the bus lane or the bike lane or the pedestrian improvements that they said they wanted in their own adopted mobility plan. So that'll be a huge fight early next year.
Who's going to oppose that? Why would people oppose that idea if you're just making people do what they've already agreed to do?
Because there's a finite amount of space, and when there's a finite amount of space, if you want to put in a bus lane, something has to go. Parking may have to go, a vehicle traffic lane may have to go, a center turn lane, something. For a bike lane, it's usually the same thing. Sometimes there's space, but usually there's also a compromise that has to be made.
Yeah.
And for some reason, even though the cars have about 99% of the space and street space in Los Angeles, for some reason, if I come out and say, you know what, could we make it 95%? And could we take 4% and make it for bikes and buses? The pitchforks come out.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's going to oppose it yet. We'll see.
We'll see. Are there any, I have a little town or a city in mind that is very bike centric, but are there communities in the state of California that are doing it right?
Santa Monica.
Santa Monica is
Yeah.
one.
Santa Monica has, I think it was just voted the 7th best biking city in the country.
Wow.
It's got a fantastic network of green painted bike lanes on traffic calm streets.
Yep.
They recently, in the last couple of years, converted parking on, or maybe it was a vehicle lane, on Ocean Avenue with a 2-way cycle track on the ocean side of the street.
Yep.
They just built the city's first protected intersection, which makes cars turn very wide, and therefore really keeps people protected that are waiting, like cyclists and pedestrians. It's really inspiring to see what Santa Monica is up to.
No, I live in Santa Monica, and I can definitely see that. And I travel on many of those green pathways.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to Davis, California?
I haven't.
You know, Davis, California has the most, you can't believe it, Davis. Davis looks like Amsterdam in terms of the number of bicycles on the street. There are thousands and thousands of bicycles in Davis. You should go up there. You'd be this would be like a vacation for you, Michael, to go up there and see what's going on. But the students up in Davis, California really commute on their bicycles.
You know, my wife wants to move to Santa Monica. That would be her dream. And for me, that'd be very boring. Not just because I was born there and I know it very well and I've spent a lot of my life there, but that's not where the fight is. You know, Santa Monica's already on a good path. City of Los Angeles, that's hostile territory there. And I want to go where I can make a meaningful difference.
So, and this guy is, Michael, you are making a huge difference. And just what you're doing in Sacramento and actually what you're doing locally is amazing. So I'm impressed. I really have to say, I wish you the very best. I happen to be one of those people who are out there biking away. And I tell everyone to bike. I'm not getting a lot of disciples in this regard, but I'm doing my best.
Put them on an e-bike.
Put them on an e-bike. Well,
yes.
I kind of think that's cheating a little bit. Am I wrong on that?
I think you're wrong. I think I used to view it that way. Now, anything that replaces a car, I love.
Okay.
And Mike Radenbaugh, who founded Rad Power Bikes, one of the most popular brands in the U.S., for e-bikes, calls it the e-bike grin. The smile that people get the first time they try an e-bike.
E-bike grin.
94% of Americans know how to ride a bike. Less
Yeah.
than 2% have ever tried an e-bike.
Yeah, no, they're phenomenal. Listen, they're wonderful. I'm kind of like the old school. I'm have a little bit of puritanical ways about me.
You don't have to ride one.
I probably won't. I mean, I probably, as I age and get older and older, I probably will have to. But at this point in time, I enjoy the exertion and the challenge of that. But that may be my future.
I don't think that I would be taking my kids around to the extent I am on a bike if it didn't have a motor.
Sure.
Because there's 3 of them and they're getting bigger and they weigh a good amount now.
Yeah.
And my father, who's in his early 70s, I always would want to ride up to Mulholland with him, and the hills were tough for him. Now with that e-bike, he's obviously beating me, but he makes it up easily. It is a equalizer. It's a game changer. E-bikes are true car replacements.
Yeah.
And that didn't even exist. The batteries weren't good enough. The quality wasn't good enough. The motors just 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
They've really come into their own.
They are. I will say one thing about e-bikes. They go very, very fast in my mind. And some of these guys who pass me on my, pedal bike are zipping along at the speed of sound. Is that a concern to you?
Well, I could go and buy a BMW right now and go on a street like Slauson, which is built like a highway. And of course, this wouldn't be legal, but I could physically go about 150 miles an hour in that car. It is not limited in any way. I could go buy an e-bike and it would be factory limited to either 20 miles per hour or 28 miles per hour.
Okay.
So to me, yes, what you just said is a problem. But let's start with the bigger picture, which is if a car crashes going 150 miles an hour, that's a big problem. If an e-bike crashes into you, you might get banged up and bruised.
Oh, for sure.
You're probably not going to die. And it's a lot smaller and a lot lighter than a Hummer, the 9,000-pound electric Hummer. So I just think, again, it's actually emblematic of this country, right? We speed limit electric bicycles, and we do not speed limit. There are no limiters on car speed.
Yeah, interesting thought. All right, we're gonna end it there. And how do people find you?
So I'm Michael at streetsforall.org, and I also have a lot of these.
So Michael at Michael at streetsforall.org. Okay.
And I also have a pretty active blog where I write all these crazy ideas at michaelschneider.com.
Okay. How do you spell Schneider?
Schneider.
Okay, that's exactly right. I know your father, by the way. And so Gary's out there on his e-bike. Okay, that's wonderful.
He actually is. He still rides a normal bike, but he sometimes rides an e-bike.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, listen, it's really been a pleasure having you, and thank you again for coming into the studio. And friends, we have been listening today to Michael Schneider. He's an activist. He's out there doing things that a lot of us should be doing. He has an organization, a political action committee called Streets for All, and making a big difference in our communities. So, Michael, again, congratulations and thanks for being here.
Thank you. And one last thing, if anybody is inspired by this and wants to help, please volunteer at streetsforall.org. Sign up to get our emails, and of course, you can donate.
Okay, you heard it, streetsforall.org. And until next time, friends, be well. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your day. Tune in again next week on Apple Podcast. Rate and comment and tell a friend.